This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Welcome back to the Steve Jones Show here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. We're sponsored by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet.
Sorry, I was hunting down a leak. I found it. New refrigerator and the line going into the ice maker is leaking. So I had to find the shutoff valve, which I did, and now they're going to have to come out and fix it. Ha ha ha. So there you go. Todd, you wonder what you do during breaks? It's not always pretty, okay? It's not
I get it.
Pretty. Well, a guy that does a great job with beautiful prose is Mark Wogenrich. And Mark, Penn State on SI, always great to have you with us. And this half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV, and Medicare. Don't forget the open enrollment's coming up. Turn to Purdy Insurance. Customer service means everything to them at purdyinsurance.com. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So, 3 games in the books, 3 games where each time Penn State was the prohibitive favorite. Where do you see things at the moment going in a positive direction? Then we'll deal with what you think needs to be corrected.
Yeah, I wrote about this last week before the Villanova game, and I don't think things have necessarily changed. I feel like just generally these 3 games they've been ultimately like a software beta test. Like Penn State has a program that is debugging, and it has time to debug before its launch date, which is September 27th when Oregon comes to Beaver Stadium. I think Pat Kraft, it was funny, Pat Kraft on the radio show before, the coaches show before the opener with Nevada, he told you, and this was discussed, talking about the stadium, the temporary seating and all that, he said, bear with us. And I found that to be kind of an endearing thing to say, that we're saying not everything's going to be perfect. Right. And I think, again, he's talking about the stadium, but I think you can maybe shift application to that to the football team too. That, through 3 games, it's 132-17, giving up 17 points in 3 games, averaging 45. Things. It feels like they are trying to test out stuff through those 3, through that period. I think one of the things that struck me in saying that they've only given up 17 points is the defense, to me, has been exceptional. I mean, for the most part, exceptional. I don't want to have to qualify everything by saying look at the competition, right. But yeah, I mean, so we know that they played 3 teams that were going to be not uncompetitive, but just uncompetitive on the scale of having a chance to win the game. but functionally still, for a first-team defense to give up basically 3 points in 3 games, which is what they did, because both of the touchdowns were to backup quarterbacks in the final 30 seconds of each game. So functionally, your first-team defense is not giving up a touchdown in 3 games, giving up a field goal. That, to me, is pretty remarkable. Katron Allen, who's averaging 8 yards per carry for those first 3 games, which I believe leads the Big Ten, in at least among backs who have maybe around at least 20 or 25 carries. I think he has looked terrific. The offensive line, to me, has gotten progressively better, and I thought was pretty on point against Villanova in blocking and protection. The defensive line, I feel like, has been the side of the ball that has taken the largest step, at least from a preseason or from the training camp preseason, where they were, at least from a depth and experience perspective, a question mark. There's a lot of, you're watching this line get ready in August, and you're saying they have to develop beyond Denai Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant, and they absolutely have. I mean, huge credit again to Deion Barnes for putting together a group that they can actually, in 3 weeks, what they've done to put together a group that they played, really, I think they can play with. Zariah Fisher's return adds just that note of just kind of a hardened, experienced kind of player who maybe he hasn't played in a year, but he has experience in big games and across seasons. And then inside, Alonzo Ford's looked really good. Xavier Gilliam, I think, has been involved was involved in the pressure on both the initial interceptions. And then the development of the younger defensive ends, especially like Chaz Coleman, has been a ton of fun to watch. I think the linebackers, particularly, Mari Campbell's been very noticeable. Tony Rojas, those guys combined for 5 tackles for loss in the last game. I like the way they've integrated the receivers, and each guy with, the new receivers, the transfer guys, each one, Hudson, Ross, and Pena, with different skill sets that they are deploying specifically to those guys as part of their offense. I do think there's a lot that they've done that you can look to and say they're at least moving. At least they moved through these 3 weeks. They've tested and debugged, I think, a lot of the stuff that they wanted to get out during this period.
People will then naturally ask about Drew Allar, and they'll ask about the production to this point of Nicholas Singleton. Your thoughts on each?
Yeah, I think they're fair questions that require a lot of context, too. It is notable to me that Drew completed 55% of his passes against Villanova, an FCS defense, albeit one that is well coached, there's no question. Mark Ferrante and his team do a really good job, and their coverage was one that was not meant to give Drew much to do about anything. You watch them rush 3 guys on multiple plays. That's difficult. 8 against 3 is difficult to complete passes against, right? Against 4, or whatever you're going to do. So that was an issue, but Drew didn't seem to be, the last couple of weeks, that there wasn't a momentum of rhythm. If that's maybe the best way to say it, that he would get into rhythm for short periods. 2-minute drill, especially. Drew is terrific in tempo offense and 2-minute drills because he's just got, places that he's going to go right away, and it's quick move, get to the line, go. And he's great at that. But he's the last couple of weeks, I think he's gotten himself out of rhythm, or the offense has participated in that too, in getting him out of rhythm, and that's been notable. I think that's been something that has been noticeable. And as regarding Nick Singleton, I would like to see him take that 16-yard gain that he's gotten a couple of times now and turn that into 30 or 40, which he just hasn't been able to do yet. Katron, I think he just looks like he has a better command of his run game at the moment. And I don't know whether, the idea of Nick pressing or trying to be perfect, and I know personality-wise with Nick he is so, I don't know if you can be coachable to a fault. that you try to please and you try to to do the dictates of what you're being told to a fault, and then you get into a game Saturday, and everything maybe becomes mechanical because you're running through a checklist in your mind of things you're supposed to do instead of, as James Franklin said last week, let it rip. I'd like to see those two guys. They probably would be the two players I would say that you maybe focused on the most going into Oregon. And certainly doesn't mean they have the bona fides. They've done it before. So I don't have any reason to believe that they're not positioning themselves to be able to perform in the high swims again.
I want to bring up something that's away from Penn State for a moment, and that is the two firings of Deshaun Foster and Brent Pry. Now, the Brent Pry thing obviously is more personal. We all know him, right? Yeah. But I don't understand the timing of it, Mark. I realize that now players do have contracts they're playing for and so forth. But the rule states if you play in fewer than 4 games or fewer, you can then bag the rest of the season and keep your eligibility. Why would Virginia Tech and UCLA make a move now, knowing that their entire roster is now vulnerable to that rule?
That's one of the questions I thought about. The transfer portal being open isn't necessarily a thing because you can't transfer and play right away.
Right.
So if you can enter and negotiate, you want 40. You want like 40 or 50 guys on your roster just to sit.
Well, in other words,
how many players?
My point is,
how many guys you're going to roster of 35 players?
Right.
Who are actually going to go out and play? Yeah.
Right. Well, my point is, you can play up to 4 games. Then when you get to game 5, you lose your season of eligibility. You may have guys wanting to preserve their eligibility for their future use someplace else. And they're going to look around and say, well, hey, thanks. You helped make my decision for me.
Right, that's exactly what I mean. After 3 games, now you've got maybe there might be 40 guys on a UCLA roster who say I'm not going to play because of just what you said, the protection of the protection of that, protection of their redshirt season, as opposed to doing it in 5 games or whatever. I guess the 3-game thing might just be a specific reaction to what happened Friday night at the Rose Bowl and Saturday night in Virginia, that they just felt this compulsion of overreaction to those specific games. I don't know.
Well, but I think, look, darn well boosters are involved here. Right?
Oh, of course.
But you have to be the cooler head in the room and say, guys, let's just wait 3 weeks, and not under the category of let's see what happens, but we can preserve the roster the rest of the season if we wait 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Right. So, you have to have a cooler head prevail in there and saying, okay, you're right. You're gonna pull away your donations. I'm going to get rid of them now. Like, just be the coolest head in the room and explain what the rules are to people as to why timing is important to do something like that.
Oh yeah, no question. I don't know how much work you're going to be able to do at this point. Heading into week 4 of a football season, to be able to even put together what's a search firm going to do, how much back channeling are they going to be able to do at this point? Because when you get to December to hire a coach, what is the as you said, the booster situation, the roster situation, what is all that going to look like? What is a new coach going to come in to this situation asking for the moon and saying, you didn't have the financial, you did not provide the financial resources to those coaches that I am looking for. You're negotiating, to me, from a position of weakness as a program by doing this so early.
I completely agree with that, Mark. It's just strange. We've seen Clemson get off to a 1-2, including the loss to Georgia Tech. LSU, you can see. But Georgia Tech was a conference game. Notre Dame's 0-2, but they played 2 very good teams in Miami and Texas A&M. Texas, Arch Manning's been whatever. What's been your take on this opening 3 weeks of the season? Because I feel like everything's closer and more close together than people realize.
Absolutely. And that's one reason why it's good to not not see a college football playoff initial ranking until I think that's going to be after the Penn State-Ohio State game, I believe, right in the first week of November. Right. Usually when that happens. So there's far too much movement early in the season that I think that's good. I mean, that's good to shuffle and shake. The football, at least the early expectations for teams, and have them understand maybe at least an order placement, and know where you're going to go. I don't think 0-2 for Notre Dame means the same thing as 0-2 for an NFL team.
Right.
Kansas City Chiefs, that sort of thing. It's very different. Notre Dame is, I see people just saying goodbye Notre Dame to the playoff, and I go, you might want to slow down on that one. It's, I don't see that being at all an issue. So this is why when I look at Penn State in the context of this season, in that accomplishing what you want to do and what you had to do in September through maybe what you might want to call like a preseason plus. I mean, it counted, so it mattered. The games have, they mattered to the record, so they couldn't just play the last 40 guys on the roster or anything like that. But they were able to sort a lot out, or at least to attempt to sort a lot out through those games. So I think, in my opinion, I think it's a benefit, but it's not something that we're really going to know until about last week of September and then October.
I want to ask you about the special teams part, because it's not just the points, but it's also the hidden yards. When you see Mack on kick returns, Ross on punt returns, and then Awosu is punting the ball, what have been your thoughts?
The punts that I've been really impressed with Gabe Nwosu is a couple of those pooch kicks, his technical punting. I just thought, the way James Franklin had described him as a punter is that he just had this incredible launch and he was going to kick something 65 yards with a ton of hang time, but could he manufacture a punt from the 40-yard line and kind of dial it in there? And I don't know what his number is of inside the 20, but it's really good, even though he's very limited.
He's 5 for 5. All 5 punts have ended up inside the 20.
Right. And it's just, I think his first punt, I think it was his second punt, actually. The first one is one he launched about 75 yards.
Yeah. Yep.
Last week. There was 67. But the second one, just the touch punt to me, and he did it again against Nevada. Yeah. That, down the ball to 2, down the ball inside the 5. Yeah. All that to me, you look forward and say that's going to come in really, that's going to come in handy. King Mack, it looks like he approaches kickoff returns with the right personal sentiment that there's a playmaking ability there that he didn't have necessarily the first 2 weeks on defense, although he did Saturday as a starter and playing more. But there's an opportunity to get a ball in play and just go past the 25. And Devontae Ross, just in talking to him, that he used a lot. He just talked about not really liking punt returns. When he was at Troy, and how it kind of became something that he appreciated, and not even and it's gone beyond that, but beyond appreciating, but really has taken into kind of a personal test, so to speak, or just his mission to get those sorts of things. Those two players have, I think it's more than subtle, but it's kind of low key, really made a huge difference. And otherwise, also in addition, when you've got a kicker who's 9 for 10 now and got 3 40-plus yard field goals, to be able to say that you did that during out of the first 3 games, which would have been unexpected to me. I wouldn't have expected them to, attempt 10 field goals in those 3 games. That's been a hidden bonus, too, with Ryan Parker.
Yeah, no, it has been. How valuable from a self-scout point of view is the little extra time the coaching staff gets this week to figure out what's been right and what they need to work on?
I think any of that time can be valuable. I wonder, though, whether you wouldn't want to go right into a game. And, because it in a way it feels like you had training camp, and then you've had these 3 games, and then you're going to go back kind of to a camp idea. And I know they're not going to be doing that. I know that that's not the point. But it just feels like they've been in this elongated, extended kind of training camp. So while that is valuable, I wonder whether they wouldn't like to just be coming out and playing Oregon right away this week. That, save the bye week, maybe for after that or, before another game. But I just feel like there's value in it. But in this particular instance, this particular situation, maybe you'd want to kind of cut loose and test everything that you've learned right away.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of looked at it from a different point of view. That we've gone through 4.5 weeks of training camp, 3 game weeks. Now you can sit back and say, all right, especially on Jim Knowles' side of the ball, okay, what works? What do we need to work on? Who's not grasping a concept? And how do we work around it? Because now I've had a chance to look at it and self-scout. I mean, that's how I looked at it.
There's no question that that's valuable. That's exactly what I'm certain that's what they're going to be doing. But I also, and just in the back of my mind, I think maybe there would, like I said, there would be that point that you played 3 games. Now you want to hit one and just test it out right away. And then maybe you can go back and recalibrate, reevaluate after that game.
Yeah, I can see that point of view. No, yeah, I can completely see that point of view. And it was you stay in rhythm, and then after that game, okay, physical, tough, hard game like that, then you get the bye week. Yeah. All right. Hey, Mark, always a pleasure. And don't forget Penn State on SI.com. He's one of the best in the business. Mark, thanks so much for your time. I always appreciate it. By the way, how's the East Side? Hot?
It's, you only get a little bit, you get a little window of like the sundown. The 3:30 games, it gets a little hot. The windows are up. It's great. You know what thing that has been really strange for me is getting accustomed to is seeing the band coming out what I call the other side of the field.
Yeah.
I'm so used to being on the west side and seeing the band coming out of the tunnel to my right that I look and I go, when did they put a tunnel down? Oh, no, never mind. We're on the east side. So that's been just me. Rich Garcelle and I say that every time. It's like, when's the band coming out from over there? But, we're old heads who have spent too much time on the west side of the stadium. So, getting a new perspective is good, though.
We still have the same perspective. All right, so we're on the opposite side. Mark, thanks so much, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate it, Steve.
We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
The daughter of former FBI has sued the federal.
The Steve Jones Show, weekdays at 1 on News Radio 1070 WKOK, on our app, and Odyssey and iHeart apps, and anytime on your favorite podcast platform.
All right, everybody, put your feet up and enjoy. The great Jody Mack is with us. Is there an area of the team that you look at that you want to see if that area of the team is a little bit better this year than last year?
They're making one change on the offensive line. I've heard that Tyler Steen has performed real well in camp, and they're confident that he can do what Mekhi Becton did.
The Steve Jones Show, sponsored by Brewers Outlet.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.